Welcome to another episode of Field Frequency. On today's episode, I am joined by Benoit Lacroix, CEO of Relion. In this episode, we talk about Benoit's journey from electrifying trucks to tackling EV charger uptime through smarter operations. Relion isn't just another EV charging network, it's an operating layer behind the scenes to keep chargers working and operational. This episode dives into how Relion is bringing order to chaos, how they're connecting data, people, and process to get things from fault to fix. The key takeaway in this episode is that the future of EV charging isn't just about hardware, it's orchestration. It's about turning complexity into flow. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of Field Frequency. Today I am joined by Benoit Lacroix. So glad to have you, Benoit. Thank you for sharing some time with Field Advantage and audience today. Looking forward to a good conversation about what you're doing in the space, what Relion is doing in the EV space. Just thankful that you've been able to share some time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Exciting. Looking forward to it.
Well, if we get kicked off, I think it always makes sense to start off with your origin story. I want to hear about what led you to where you're at today. What walk us through your journey. What's the key moments and challenges? What shaped your decision to start Relion, and what prior experiences informed this decision, and where you're at today? Give us your origin story.
Yeah, the origin story. Well, what led me to Relion started like 20 years ago, 18 years before I started Relion, actually. I started way too early in 2005 working on electrifying heavy-duty trucks with my first startup. It was called Efenco, still called Efenco. And mission was as naive back then as let's, render heavy-duty truck more efficient. And we had started with refuse collection truck, waste collection trucks. And there's a lot of things that I've been doing over those 16 years with this Efenco experience that, led me, I guess, to Relion today. And let me explain. We were a manufacturer, right? Like a powertrain manufacturer, design and manufacturer. And so 2009-10, we put our first prototypes on the road. And if you look under the hood of a hybrid electric back then, or just an electric powertrain, there are a lot of components that are very analogous to an EVSC charger, DCFC for sure, like a fast charger, right? Like you have AC, DC converter, all those orange wires, contactors. It's the same kind of dishes under the hood there. And there's a lot of things that can go on: software, firmware, hardware, hydraulics. And so we deploy our first systems like a couple of hours away from Montreal, where we're based. And we had the great idea of putting data loggers to record everything that would go on those first vehicles. And, let's start our first deployment. Then, of course, it starts breaking. It always does. And then you drive every time 2-3 hours to go figure out what's going on. Then you get there. Oh, gosh, you do the diagnostic there. You don't have the parts. You can't do anything. You drive a few times. And we said after a few weeks, that doesn't work. So this is where we started our O&M journey, really like connecting those powertrains. So we just put a few things together, connected them with cellular connection. And then we started having our remote monitoring, really granular. And then, so many, and then with scale, you start having few powertrains, then you have a scaling problem, then you need to manage all those issues, then, starting to add some issues, issue management, part management, like then, you can always go and attend those chargers, pun unintended, but those powertrains yourself, starting to call for service providers. So you see me coming, right? Like over the 10 years that followed, at some point we had about 500 powertrains spread in North America and Europe on trucks using our technology. That starts to be like I was a big number at the time for electrified trucks. Start to be a big number. Yeah, so we had over the time designed our own, processes, parts of technology all put together. That was not super streamlined, but still that worked for us. So and that was under me. I was part of, I was responsible to go to market. So that included customer experience, customer support, technical support. So for me, this is one of beside the good design of our powertrain, this is what made the difference. Being able to support well your technology in the field, being as proactive as possible. I like to say back then that there was not a truck that would come in the bay for a fix on our powertrain that we wouldn't know already what's going on and what parts needs to be looked at. Maybe the part is already there. That was really powerful. And so fast forwarding a little bit, then after that, I did 2 years as a hired CEO for a telematic company. Again, still in the fleet, a lot of connectivity, a lot of analogous things. And after that, took a little break, and I came across Diagram Venture, which is a venture studio. So it's a part of venture capital fund who looks at business opportunity in the clean tech. And they saw, EV charging infrastructure scaling up. Sure. A lot of reliability problem. Yeah, I agree. And then they kind of proposed this O&M play here. Like there's something to do to improve on O&M in general, technology, service, and I was like, oh, that's for me, And this is when I joined as a co-founder with Jesse, who's been like mastermind between a network monitoring system for IT services, which is pretty analogous. You're familiar with that, Jason. So yeah, that was crossroad there between like a fund and two entrepreneurs and two entrepreneurs with some experience, right? That we said, that's it. We gotta come in and bring to the market a technology that will be really dedicated to EVS infrastructure, liability, and operation at scale. Like really bring the system and the technology for that.
Thank you for that overview. Relion's operations and maintenance platform has been, and at least the way I've heard you describe it in the past as well, is the hardware agnostic standpoint. Obviously, it's taking a step back before I follow that train of thought. You mentioned early on about the early entrance into the market with the hardware around the vehicles. You said something about being naive. I think it's maybe more ambitious is the way to frame it. And I yeah, ambitious because that's there's a lot to be said to be entering into the market space at that time. That's very early on, and so you've been able to have a pretty good view of the growth of this space. Naturally, that's going to inform what you've done in the space. So Relion's operations and maintenance platforms, it's a hardware agnostic. There's integration across different charger types. You talked about the parts on the vehicle side, disparate parts, all the stuff that was involved in that, tracking it, managing it, then kind of just taking a step away from the vehicle side and looking at the infrastructure side. Obviously, we see the diversity of products. Chargers themselves are now a commoditized industry because there's so many different types of manufacturers, both in the U.S. and globally. So integrating across these diverse charger types, diverse vendors. How does Relion manage the interoperability challenges that come from the different hardware stacks that are out there, the different standards, whether it's communication protocols, and then obviously just the legacy component of the industry and the infrastructure as a whole? What's Relion's strategy to maintain this compatibility across and how are you positioning for Evolve? I know I'm throwing a lot of questions at you, but I'm trying to kind of, one, take a step back and look at what Relion's doing, what Relion's platform is solving, and then kind of walk us through what, those nuances that I shared.
Yeah, a lot to unpack here, and
Mhm.
and let me by the end of my answer come back to this. And I just want to take a little step back first. Like I think what does the ecosystem needs even to have agnostic services, right, and technology. And I'm saying this with the utmost empathy, having been myself a manufacturer for a long time, and of kind of relatively newer product technology and ecosystem. At the beginning, you really want to keep cards really close to your chest as a manufacturer, and you've witnessed that, like earlier on as a service provider. Manufacturer will tend to want to do it themselves because maybe they're not able to yet delegate service and maintenance. They see it as a business opportunity themselves, or sometimes they're pressured by financier to like, hey, there's potential revenues there. Let's do it ourselves, and work for some time. But I think once you hit a certain tipping point in scale, either in quantity or geographic coverage, it becomes really hard as a manufacturer to be very good and great over a large territory in different application, for an ecosystem and infrastructure that becomes more and more critical for a growing number of drivers and operators. So I think for agnostic services and technology to exist, we need also an open ecosystem in terms of business models, willingness to share data, information, training, documentation, willingness to use standard protocols. And we have the OCPP, of course, being one example where I think we're just like, we just saw the point of the iceberg of leveraging this great standards, and there's going to be more to come. But if you look at those standards and you read them thoroughly, a lot can be leveraged there to allow agnostic and third party service providers and technology to leverage a lot in detection and operation and maintenance. Now, still, this being said, everyone has their own interpretation of all those standards and implementation We wish it would always be the same. It's not. Machines are also different by design. Not, you open two different DCFCs, fast chargers, they're not going to be all designed and done the same way. So of course, there's a lot of, particularity to all of those manufacturers. So my unsophisticated answer to your question is it takes a lot of elbow grease. And you saw a platform, it cannot only be a platform. You need expertise. You need resources, dedicated resources on our side to really go through all of those different manufacturer specificities, if you will, and like what are the error codes, what it means for them, going through all documentation, going through history of issues with different manufacturers, with given customers, and really have like specific meaning to all of them. So it's not, unfortunately or fortunately for us, somehow like you really need to be dedicated and really spend the time on all of those manufacturers, and over time get better at offering both detection and diagnostic issue resolution for all of those. So I don't think, with all the best standards, with all the best intentions for the whole from the whole industry, even then there will always be specific use case per manufacturer. And I think just being dedicated to the task is what's making a difference over time.
Yeah, to your point of the diversity in products, of the way they look, not only in products being released today, there's also a diversity in the design of products, from a legacy charger, say a 50 kilowatt charger, an early
Yeah.
generation DC fast charger, compared to, 150 or 350 kilowatt DC fast charger today. The EV charger space has had to be agile in the sense in where it deploys, what it deploys. But within the EV charging space, you have players focused on different goals and intentions. Some are focused on site deployment, some are focused on energy management, software stacks, maintenance, a whole host of things. And so Relion as a broad operations and maintenance platform, where do you kind of zero in on? Where are your competitors missing it, or maybe adjacent players getting it right or missing it? And where does Relion kind of zero in and focus on to differentiate from what's already out there on the market?
Yeah, yeah. So what we like to say, from problem detection to resolution, right? And we're really like by end to end and offering a continuity in the whole operation of an infrastructure. And I'm going to do a bit of semantic here. Like when you look at the name charging station management software, and you look at the definition of it, it's a great product, by the way. And really, like initially and still today, primarily they're designed to manage the usage of those stations. We're talking about, rates management, reservation, managing users, the apps, anything, load management. A lot of features are user facing, making sure that the usage of the chargers will be perfect. That's the target. But when you talk about operating at scale, so really looking at infrastructure sub-organization across network, really monitoring and proactive monitoring on the usage of those chargers, patterns on utilization, patterns of accessing those chargers, patterns on errors, like we just talked about, different manufacturers, different patterns of error codes and all of that. So that's this is my, from detection, really being proactive. I like to say, not looking at the snapshot, but really the movie, what's going on with this charger or with this location or with those, different or same model across different sites, let's say. So really looking at patterns that really be proactive at raising literally faults. So the charger's not working, or maybe risks. Sometimes it just can be risk, but an operator who's managing an infrastructure with utilization rate north of 40, 50%, a risk is maybe a problem down the line in a couple of days. So you really want to be proactive there. Really proactive about monitoring, creating and managing issues through the whole life cycle of the issue. For us, an issue, by the way, it's an incident. It's a problem. It's a problem with the charger. So having a tool where you can bring everyone on board, that's the operator, the service provider, manufacturer. So really like Relion is a hub where all of those stakeholders can collaborate over an incident and really make sure that the accountability is clear between all of those parties. Like, is it an EVSE problem right now? Is it like just related to our local connectivity? Making everything clear across the board. And then when I say to resolution, so it's down to also lifecycle management and work order creation, and down to digital dispatch of service providers such as your firm, Jason. So really having everything under one roof that allow a network operator to manage the whole infrastructure and the whole operation and maintenance process without having to hop from the CSMS to look at some error codes, then jump on Zendesk, let's say, or whatever ticketing system, jump on, bunch of communication tools, email, SMS, post-its, phone calls, whatnot, to orchestrate. I think the word is there, orchestrate the whole operation and maintenance process to make sure that the infrastructure works. And so where Relion fits in the whole ecosystem, so we fit adjacent to the CSMS. Really, we see a complementary position there to CSMS. We already do attach with some of the manufacturer backend to do, issue escalation, anything that is related to warranty, or anything that needs to be escalated because the problem is, it's actually a very low level problem that only the manufacturer can take care of. And of course, this exists. And at the end of the spectrum for field dispatch, connecting our platform to FSM, field service management platforms that are really made to dispatch the service technicians. So we send to them like a populated work order with specific instructions. So it's intelligent. It was already digested, and a work order populated with all the SOPs or instructions is already sent. So this is how we kind of fit in the middle. I like to say that we are the cogs in the wheel to really streamline the whole process instead of being choppy, if you will, and fragmented between siloed systems.
Yeah, there's definitely some fragmentation, especially when you look at the core competency of the C. They obviously have the CSMS, the charger station management system in place, but their core competency is, of course, focusing on their customer, the one using their network, using their chargers. And so, you talked about kind of the process, and Relion is that cog in that machine that's taking this organization's SOP on how they respond to an immediate need and how they factor in hardware, warranty status of hardware, all of the things that involved to your point of getting good output when it comes to the field service aspect of it. In other words, you want to provide your providers with good triage on the front end, so that way the scope of work and the SOP attached to that scope of work is, 'cause that's going to drive the first time fix rate. That's going to drive the resolution around whatever the issue is. And so Relion's got to really peel the layers of the need of the operators. And so I'm sure there's going to be some diversity among the verticals, even probably the regions. You've got, Relion, I'm assuming, targeting multiple verticals, larger public charging operators, fleet operators, multi-family events, workplace charging, all of these things. As you're looking at those individual needs, where do you zero in on? Where do you focus? Or, what's the optimal vertical? What's a vertical, maybe is not even understanding the solution that Relion's bringing to market?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always say like we're relevant. Ultimately, we're relevant to anything but charging at home. If you have a single home family, you have a level 2 behind the house. Charger doesn't work in the morning, just take an Uber, whatever. I don't think you need like a high level knock in technology to monitor this, right? So, and then, narrowing down to a little bit more our ICP, you need volume, yes, technically, and ultimately our platform will be really relevant to, public fleets, multi-unit residential buildings, workplaces. But what we're finding out is today, most deployment in MURBs or workplaces, very often you'll have several level 2s that were installed, and there aren't that many electric cars that drive there. The utilization rate, is not super high. So you have a lot of redundancy, you have many chargers, it's not as critical. If I look at the other end of the spectrum, public charging in all aspect is usually very critical. There's a lot of drivers depending on that. The utilization rate is fairly high for level 3s as much as level 2 chargers. We have a project here in Montreal where we're monitoring curbside level 2 chargers in downtown. Utilization rate is north of 50%. So a lot of drivers are depending on that. So yes, level 2s are not super complex compared to fast chargers. Of course, the diagnostic is faster, but it becomes a volume game. You have like hundreds, sometimes thousands of chargers. That's a lot of issues to manage. That's a lot of workflows. That's a lot of work orders to produce. That's a lot of issues to follow up on. So that's where Relion really comes efficient for those large deployment of high utilization level 2s in public charging. Obviously, public charging with level 3s, on-the-go chargers, that goes without saying, they're very critical chargers, and the complexity of the machine really calls for, a technology and a service like ours. And we spoke with a lot of CPOs and dealing with a lot of 3POs, large and small, and it's always the same model that I described a bit earlier, leveraging the CSMS for some monitoring, leveraging a bunch of internal tools, always fragmented between ticketing, Excel, Power BI, and never stop. So again, bringing all those different tools and bringing the process, continuing process under one roof. So we really become a tool of choice, for the NOC team, basically, to really be able to streamline the resolution process. Fleet, if there's something that is it's fleet. Think of the school bus fleets or delivery fleets. Trucks or buses have to leave in the morning, right? No question, no option there. And what's really interesting with fleets is the element of interest, if you will. It's not only the availability of the charger, but making sure that the charging session reaches its prescribed goal, very often by the morning. If you plug vehicles at night or Friday night, you expect that they will reach like a certain state of charge at some point in time. So we go the extra mile here to really make sure not only the charger is working, but the vehicle is charged at its desired level. So this is a great application where we can really make a difference for small and large operator, really making sure that vehicles are ready in the morning. So, sorry, to sum it up, public charging of all SaaS, right? The pure CPOs, retails, curbside charging, and parking fleets for sure are a great application, and an indirect application for us are service providers. So we see a tendency where service providers, the legacy model is you are mandated as a service provider to be called to intervene on chargers, right? You're waiting to get a ticket, you show up, you fix. But more and more service providers, they're so well positioned. You guys are so well positioned with all the expertise internally to offer managed service with a retainer, right? And say, hey, we're not only going to be reactive answering tickets, but now offer you a managed service. We'll take this load off of your shoulder. Think of small fleets with 20, 75 chargers. They don't want to internalize the expertise to do this monitoring. So they would rather hand off this service. So we see more and more service provider like looking at kind of offering this kind of CPO-ish service, if you will, having this managed service. So indirectly, we have a lot of interest there to serve the smaller customers across the board.
There's some of those smaller customers are wanting to offload that. They're wanting to
Absolutely.
offload
Yeah.
from the managed services to the tier one aspect of it, all of it. You've got organizations that operate within the legacy mindset of how they came to market. When you talk about managed services being outsourced to a third party service provider like Field Advantage for a reason, there's obviously transparency and some collaboration. There's obviously the handing over of the keys kind of to the front door to be able to do all of that. There's messaging that goes into making that either a successful message that is conveyed to the operator, or what they're risking if they can't continue to do it in house and do it based on the method. Because one of the things Field Advantage prides itself on is its first time fix rate
Yeah.
percentage. We're proud of the fact that when we go out there, we get it fixed the first time and we don't have to return because there was something wrong. But a lot of that success is dependent on platforms such as this or a proper diagnosis. You talked about not just looking at snippets, but looking at the movie. What's the
Yeah.
story here? What's going on? What's this charger, this problem charger? Because it seems like there's always 10% of a site that has a problem. That one charger out of the 10, or that one charger out of the 5 that seems to always have the problem. So what's the story? What's the storyline look like? What's been a predictable failure? How many times has this particular module failed? Whatever that issue may look like. And so, these operators, they're looking at cost containment. They're looking at, first time fix rate is obviously important to them. And so part of that messaging, part of that story is that reliability as a premium. Like I've seen you or communications out of Relion. Kind of one of the key motivators for Relion is that 20 to 30% of EV chargers are inoperable any given time, and so there's a real problem with that. And you see other stats: 1 out of every 5 charging sessions is unsuccessful. I mean, those are poor statistics. And so let's rely on manage that tension between reliability as a premium and then the cost pressure to stay in service.
Yeah, one thing I'm very careful of is, and actually posted recently on that, is a promise absolutes in terms of reliability. I'm not going to go there and say, work with Relion and you're going to get 98% availability. I'm sorry, but I'm not in the game of promising this because there are so many things that can go wrong. What we sell people is visibility and control and efficiency. And this is where really the conversation, this is what drives the conversation. Less hurdles, more control. I like to say, like, instead of having 4 weeks delay to fix something, let's bring it to 4 days. It's not great. We all want the, 4 hours, but 4 weeks to 4 days without pulling your hair and losing your mind and not knowing what's going on, just being more efficient and wasting less resources fixing that problem. That's already a huge gain. So if you think of CPOs, the huge driver to work with us is operational efficiency. Of course, that will drive to better reliability and potential to scale with confidence also, because things that I've heard so often is like, a network with 250, 500, 750 chargers, having 2-3 persons doing the work of monitoring those and managing those chargers is like, yeah, there's no way we can scale the way we're doing things today. So it kind of works. We put our systems and processes together, but we if we want to scale, we just got to keep adding people. It's not, it's not scalable. It's not sustainable. It's not profitable. So I think the main driver that we bring on the table is just being more efficient and doing the work of operation and maintenance. I like to take the analogy to people who've been into business development or sales. Would you do sales today without a CRM? And most people would say no, you can't. So it's kind of an analogy here. So the big driver here is efficiency, visibility and control, accountability, continuity in the business processes, which ultimately will drive to excellency and to the availability. But I think we need to build on that bottom foundational work there and processes and technology, because before we can start promising on absolute numbers of 99.9 plus, I think, percent into the fuel retail. That should be the target, right? We should be as good as that. But there's a lot, and I mentioned about ecosystems before. Even you promise all, the moon, but you don't have parts, you don't have information, you don't have like right visibility because some of the information is not enough available. There's no way you can promise that. So foundational thing, really improving on processes and visibility and building from that. Not only Relion, I think as an industry also.
And going back to your analogy, that's a good analogy about sales and business development with that CRM. Of course, I'm sure any regional sales manager that just heard you basically remind them they got to get in their CRM and do some updates. They probably rolled their eye about that. But the hardest operational out there when it comes to an operator is all you talked about the efficiency, where you're focused at, and what does that look like. The hardest operational constraints are all the moving pieces, the spare parts, technician availability, technician knowledge base, real-time logistics to get them on site and meet the SLA or the desired SLA of the operator. Diagnosing the issue on the front end, of course, is important. Dispatching the right technician with the parts and with the right scope of work is the thing. And so you've got to scale that. And you talked about that scale a minute ago when you said, a couple people in a room trying to manage different hardware brands in the portfolio, different SOPs as it relates to the OEM when there is a problem. How does Relion kind of bring all that in? I guess I'm asking you to double click on that CRM. How is Relion bringing that together?
Brick by brick. It is such a complex problem. Operation and maintenance at scale of, you mentioned it, like you mentioned a lot of complicated aspect of operation. Everything you just enumerated is very complex by itself. And then you put all together and all of those things need to happen in a good way to be efficient in operation. Again, experience high availability and high uptime. So brick by brick. And one thing that, my own experience with operation maintenance before, and also as a fleet telematic provider, which kind of, analogically, the similar type of technology. And it really makes a difference when you basically sit with all of your customers, all of your users, look at their processes, look at their friction point. What is creating the most problem today, this semester, this year? What are the priorities? What can we improve with our system? Because there's so many things we can do. They are, from detection, from issue management, managing the parts, managing warranty, managing work orders, reports. We do all that today under one roof. But we can improve all of those things over the next years, and we'll be busy until for a long time, right? So what do you improve first? Where do you get better? Really just listening to our current customers, prospect, spending a lot of time with operators. And the good news is a lot of the main things are always coming up. So, without revealing our secret sauce, there's a lot of things that keep coming up across the board. So there's a common trunk of improvement that we can do. Obviously, we focus on that. But then there's a little nitty gritty stuff that once you start deploying your service, your technology, we make sure to have weekly and monthly, depending on whatever our customers are needing, really close to them and improving with big and small features, big and small initiatives from our part to just make their life easier. We're dealing with human operations is super hard. And at the end of the day, our value prop is help these people manage at scale, being proud of their work, taking care of the problems that matter. Just that, bringing the problems that matter. You have so many chargers down, which is the one that matters the most for strategic reason, for revenue reason, all of those things. So brick by brick, I cannot claim we come with magic one. We're going to solve this whole thing. Elbow grease. I'm going to bring this again. I keep bringing it back. That's how I think you fix such a complex problem over time.
I agree. And, as you're solving these problems, and as you said, you can't reveal any secret sauce for those prospective customers that are out there listening to you. They'll have to get that secret sauce directly from you and find out exactly how you can meet. But you keyed in on something that was very important, and that was listening, ingesting the actual needs and wants of those that are operating, where the problems are at. So, and of course, that's where you're meeting them, is at their point of need. When Relion is kind of looking at next stages in solutions development, again, not tapping into anything that's protected IP here, but where where is predictive analytics? Where does AI fit into the platform? Machine learning. How do all those parts and pieces that can help success for the customer? How I'm looking at those.
Yeah. A couple of notes here. There's a lot of low hanging fruits there to take care of. For us, it's automation. There's a lot of things, a lot of repetitive tasks. No one likes to redo the same thing over and over. So we're really attentive to automating a lot and having this continuity. We're in a kind of a unique position to automate, again, this detection to resolution process. Think like, is error XYZ, opens this ticket, produce this work order with the SOP because we've been through it a few times, dispatch the right technician because it was already configured in the platform. Boom, no human in the loop. You already have like a truck dispatch for that given error that we know, right? So there's a lot under the hood, technologically speaking, that you can imagine, including AI. But for us, we're in a unique position to provide this automation process across the board. So that's one. There's a lot of help for diagnostic, obviously with AI and LLM that we that we can do again in our position. So definitely, there's a lot of assisting, that we can provide to network operators, to service providers to better do their work. One thing that we're really careful of is to bring quality over quantity in those initiatives. We're talking about critical operation. We don't want to bring hallucinations or anything that, would not serve anyone. So again, brick by brick, same thing here, really like rugged. At the end of the day, what we sell is a product, not technology. So we really want to make sure that to bring answers, to bring information that is actionable, that is trustable to our customers. So that's kind of vision of how we bring new technology, but definitely there's a lot to play with right now, obviously with AI and LLM. And we're really excited of what we're going to bring over the next months in that regard.
Appreciate what you've shared thus far about Relion, problems that you're solving, how you're solving them, and really sharing your insights, because some of the things that you've spoken to are representative of your knowledge of the need and the solution for the said need. Relion has raised a seed round that netted, several millions, for scaling. You guys are growing, you're expanding, you're operating in Canada, you're operating the U.S. markets. So as we're getting ready to kind of land the ship, I'd like to kind of look at, the outlook for Relion. What's next? What's the next phases? What's your top strategic and operational priorities as you're scaling in these new geographies you're moving into? And, what's the next 3 to 5 years look like for you?
A lot of growth, in the sense that, I think we bring a new paradigm, right? Like operation maintenance platform was not really a topic until like a few months and years ago, where just a few startups really looking at that specifically in terms of technology, and a lot of education, a lot of traction that we get in Canada and the US. Mostly, this is where we're the most proactive. There too, interweaved ecosystems. There's a lot of businesses and network that cross the border. So for us, it's one big market, basically. So a lot of deployments with, again, mostly CPO, some fleets and service providers I explained a bit earlier. So it's really like doubling down on everything I mentioned a bit earlier and deploying the platform. As I said, increasing our offering in all of those big, how could I say, realm of value in the operation and maintenance process from detection to issue management, lifecycle management, and work order. So keep improving the product on that. But yeah, deploying really, and there's a virtuous effect of on deploying is as we deploy with a certain CPO and then we work with the service provider, and we work with the service provider and say, hey, with this, there's other CPO there that want to work with us, and this kind of hub effect that we create both with our service and platform that gets really interesting, and everyone wins as we gain experience and share experience in solving issues. So that's really very nice to witness. So yeah, expanding on that, we look in just opportunistically right now, and only to find out that they're struggling with the same issues as we do. Same technology, both hardware and software and operation maintenance, it's the same. So we are considering this, but I like to say let's crawl before walking. And right now we have a lot of fun just deploying the system and the service in Canada and the US.
Appreciate you sharing your background experience, all that you shared with us today. This is a conversation. Obviously, for those that would like to connect with you, connect with Relion, how can people reach out to you? How can people connect with you to learn more?
The good old LinkedIn, so efficient, and I make sure to look at my messages there. So Benoit Lacroix on LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean LinkedIn is so efficient, so easy for everyone. So please reach out. I do look at my message very often, and I really enjoy having conversation about just deploying and any struggle on the industry. Like not only operation and maintenance, of course, I have a little interest there, but just like I've been very engaged into the ecosystem over years in policies and on a bunch of things in different ecosystems. Just love this industry. So yeah, just like to hear about good and bad stories about the EV charging infrastructure and EV industry in general.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And before we sign off here, any parting words of wisdom, anything you'd like to close out this conversation with?
It's a together thing. Of course, we all want to, put bread on the table, all be good at what we're doing, but it is this to scale and to be the industry we all want and succeed in this transition. It's a collaboration. It's a together thing. Everyone needs to be very good at what they're doing, but collaborate with the other parties. So I think this is how we're going to make it.
Benoit, thank you for being on Field Frequency. Appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. It was so fun. Thank you.